Good morning, everybody. It's very, very early, and out west, extremely early. But we'll give a few minutes to let people log on, and we'll have a talk today. Winter upon us. It's cold day in Ontario. Heavy snow. Christmas kind of weather, but it's what it is. That's Canada. You just never know what you're going to get and how long the season's going to run. And usually we overlap our spring and summer, and of course our fall definitely overlaps our winter. So we have quite the long winter season in Canada, and depending on where you live, it can be even longer than that. But we're going to have a good talk today because I started a group, the 16,000, and it's a protest group that I'm planning for. I want it to be large scale. A number of courthouses are listed, which includes Alberta's Superior Court. And I just had a big dump of snow, sorry. And our legislature, of course. And it's all against that autocracy and that King's Court system. We've been building that for a while. We're at about 10% now of the Albertans that we need for the event. We had a nice little runoff there. It was pretty good about 2 weeks ago, so that's good. A lot of people are getting involved and starting to look at things that they're not as they appear, and obviously the government doesn't run exactly like everybody thinks it does. This post is extremely important because I see it on my page, and I'm very disappointed that administrators allowed that to go through. So I'm going to make this video. We're going to talk about it because the things I talk about, it's always to set people straight and absolute truth as best I can. And we're going to get into the right of religion, how that is in our charter, how that is in absolute international law, and Canada not following suit. It's very important for any one of the Christian faith here in Canada to watch this video. So if you're a believer in the narrative of Jesus in some formation, whether that's heavily invested in Old Testament or New Testament, doesn't matter, because we got to get something out that's very important on rules of governance, how to govern. We're going to go into constitutionalism. Now, this is what's missing in Canada, and why the charter's not enshrined, and why Canada is backdoor dealing against your human rights, what you can classify as your God-given rights. I also tag union in this. So anyone who's in a union who doesn't believe in God, we have to go back here to the drawing board for all Canadians, because you're being manipulated, all of you, left and right here. And you can put religion over here, you can put unions over here, and there's a lot of union members who don't believe in God necessarily, or not in a fashion of Christianity, which is a majority. It's a majority in Canada. Here's the problem, folks. When you post things like, oh, Muslims are a problem, or oh, look, Muslims get more than Christians, you've already been tricked into the pitfall of what the political parties are pushing you towards, especially if you're a Christian. And why you shouldn't do the anti-Muslim narrative. The right of religion does not exist absolute in our Constitution preamble. In fact, in Canada, you have a supremacy of the politician, supremacy of the crown. Anyone who comes to Canada, immigrates, they have to swear an oath to a foreign power. They're dropping their religion and moving forward. That's the preamble of the Canadian Constitution. Your charter in a constitutional monarchy has never, ever overpowered the crown. It's subject to the crown, meaning the politicians interpret it as they say what's best for the people, what the people want. When they trick you, and the political parties, you could have NDP way over on the left running down religion, and then you got from the far right the right side running down what's called freedom of association, which lumps religion and unions together. So unions fight for that against religion. Religions fight for the freedom of religion against freedom of association. And you've already been bamboozled, because both freedom of religion and freedom to be in a union are tied together through freedom of association. What Canada doesn't have in its preamble is supremacy of God, the God clause. And it's important. Christians, Muslim, Buddha, all of it, you can go through everything. You can go through Lord Krishna, you can go through, I know there's dozens and dozens of religions. I've studied this quite a bit. You can get into First Nations and natural law. You can get into unions and a lot of members who may, from that left side, not like religion at all. But you're all missing a very, very important thing here. The God clause, embedded in many, many constitutions around the world, is whatever God you wish to choose. It's the countries that specify one type of God and force that upon all citizens. And i.e., yes, there are Muslim countries that do that constitutionally. It's very wrong. It's actually a human rights violation. When you get into the other idea that there is no God clause, that a lot of union members and organizations tied to will tell you, get rid of it. Well, guess what, everybody? That God clause, if you don't believe in God, you still need the God clause. The God clause puts everybody the same, meaning whoever your higher power is, whether that's an absence of God, whether it's energy of the universe, whether it's evolution, whether that's Jesus Christ, whether that's Muhammad, to each their own. What it is saying, what it is absolutely saying, is there's no man or woman to be put higher than any other man or woman. The supremacy of God, that is the clause. That is a major portion of very successful nations and the start of impenetrable constitutionalism. That's the start. When you break down, we could go through many. We're just starting at the very beginning, the preamble. That's missing. There's much missing in Canada's preamble that places you, regardless of religion, places you putting your divinity in man, in a set of men and women, in a classified first-class citizenry that is to be divine over all of you. Now, I don't know about a lot of Christian folks out there, but that is nothing that God has ever preached in Jesus Christ, Old Testament. Muslims, you're very much the oldest of Old Testament. Jews and the Jewish community, your Old Testament, you divide at the point of Jesus. The point here is, folks, regardless of your religion or non-religion denomination, but especially for religious folks, do you want to put your supremacy in a set of first-class citizens to be divine over you, like Jesus or like God? Think about it, people. When you run down Muslims, which has been a very good trick by both the left and right, they have bamboozled a lot of Christians in that Old Testament. And yes, there's some Jewish communities, and yes, absolutely, the Muslims in a small minority of their faith are in that through the sword verses. It's wrong. It's wrong, and it's exploited, especially in the country of Canada, especially by the government. They found a loophole to trick all of you into giving up your right to religion. That charter right, that very important human right, so that you will never, ever look at the God clause as it is. Because when you start condemning other religions, even though you don't like it, when they're in a minority situation, you're telling the government it's okay to remove freedom of religion. That's what you're doing. So when you post negative about Muslims and, oh, this religion shouldn't be here, or, oh, look, Muslims are congregating and the government's not doing anything about it, or you're going with the spy camera and you're saying, oh, down with Muslims, oh, Muslims are responsible, blah, blah, blah. Guess what? You're removing the supremacy of God from the narrative. You're removing freedom of religion. You're making it that much easier for the crown-embedded colonialism by these political figures to absolutely put them in the supremacy. That's what you're all doing. I'm going to post this video on the 16,000. I'm going to ask admins remove any reference to the Muslims and videos of people going to Muslim churches and videoing, oh, look at all the cars. They're a minority. If you haven't figured out that the government's tricking you Christians into attacking the Muslim minority so that way they can remove your freedom of religion that much easier. And if you think, if you're wise and you think about this, if you don't think that once you give them that power and they destroy Christianity, if you think that Muslim, Jew, all of it, every other minority religious group is next, think about it. I'm going to tell you, as a union member and man most of my life, the government tries to destroy the biggest of those groups first. Once they finally knock out the biggest, strongest groups, the rest go like dominoes. They never ever target the minority union group in a voting bloc. They always go after the mightiest of the mighty in the longest battle that they have to wage. That's what your left and right governments do on all of your freedoms, Canadians. And the more they get away with, the further they go, the more they bamboozle the masses and they get away with it, the more they take from everybody. Absolutely. That is the truth. This is my video today. Share it if you're smart enough to understand what I'm trying to relate to you. You can't stand up to a government if you're actually helping the government to take your rights away. Think about it. Regardless of how you feel about other religious denominations, or regardless if you're a union person who can't stand religion at all, where do you want your supremacy? In the politicians or in you, the people? Think about that for all Christians, union members, Muslims, and the list goes on and on and on. Because we're already failing. The unions have failed quite a long time ago and they're going down the toilet. Now it's religion. The next step in the right of freedom of association. Governments right across Canada, through the premiers, have been legislating steady. I know this absolutely, in fact, in Alberta. Obviously, that's going on here in Ontario as I listen to more and more Ontarians and I get to know the province. Obviously, this premier's been doing it too. But it's likely right across Canada. Many acts, bills, and legislation over and over, taking away your right to protest, taking away major civil rights, tied to your charter rights. But if they can crush your civil rights provincially and get you all to give up your charter rights, they reign supreme, they dictate to you, and we are only going to become more and more of a dictatorship through absolutely crown-embedded autocracy. That's reality. People need to wake up, get smarter. It's not to be mean, but it's to explain to you that literally so many are coming into Canada through immigration every day who swear away their religion as it always has been. So those long-time Canadians who were born here, who don't know anything about what I'm talking about, We give away our sovereignty to a foreign nation. Every immigrant who comes here, go find an immigrant to talk to who got their Canadian citizenship, and they will tell you they swore an oath to a foreign nation. They give their supremacy, this supremacy of God clause, when you look at it as it is for many, many nations of the world, but not Canada, they are asked to give away that to the politicians, meaning whatever religion you have, Christian, Muslim, Buddha, go on and on here, they set it down and they give that divinity to the politicians, to the crown. That's what happens. So as we cycle through, it's only going to get worse and worse for Canadians. The politicians really have you spent and beat. That's the reality, and it's only going to get worse. UK started this process. Canada follows as one of the common law Commonwealth countries. That's the truth. This is my video. Share. Get it out there. It's accurate. It's 100% true, and it's verifiable. Any of you can look it up. Go look at the Oath of Citizenship. Go look up Supremacy of God. Start reading, and you'll find in constitutional preambles, those with it always repel, whether it was Nazi, Soviet Union. Poland's a prime example of the God clause, the supremacy of God. They've been able to again and again repel all kinds of foreign influences, foreign political powers who would try to destroy the soul of a nation. Poland's the best example of a strong constitutional preamble of supremacy of God, where a group of peoples, again and again, when challenged, proved in history they could repel any ideology forced upon them in supremacy of a ruler, supremacy of a man. Polish are able to defend that supremacy of God, not in an absolute dictated supremacy of a specific God. That's up to each and every Polak. That's the reality. Thanks. Share. That's it.